On this episode, we talk about the other side of the story, not the recruiter side, but the client manager side, with Mr. Mike Spies, client manager here at Atlas. Atlas All Access starts now.
Kirkham at 0450.
Mr. Spies, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thanks for being. And you guys, you've seen Mike before. I did the 5-question Friday with him. He was the first client manager I did back, I guess probably a couple months back.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Yeah. And Mike has been here for the better part of 5 years.
Yeah, going on 5 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and started off as a recruiter. Did a little recruiting in the beginning because we did a little bit of everything in the beginning.
Yeah, maybe 2 months.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then switched over to the client manager role. So just a little background here. I only know of a couple agencies that make a hard line between recruiter and client manager, account manager, whatever you want to call it. Here at Atlas, we decided a long time ago, and this wasn't an idea that we came up with. It was an idea that we borrowed from somebody else that had this idea first in the industry. Mm-hmm. That if you have those two sides, recruiters only talk to nurses, client managers only talk to hospitals, right?
That's right.
And the interaction between the client manager and the recruiter is where the magic really happens. So why don't you talk about that? Talk about your role and what your day looks like as a client manager just talking to hospitals.
So I think to follow what you just said and to elaborate on that, because there are two defined roles, I mean, that allows that relationship to blossom between the recruiter and the nurse, and the nurse not to just feel like a number. And it allows that recruiter to focus strictly there. And it's the same with myself working with the hospital. I can really develop that relationship, and my focus is with the hospital and getting those contracts and doing what I can do. It's best for the nurse. And it's very important for me. So you talk about, what do I do as a client manager? I have to make sure that first the information about the job, the hospital, everything is accurate for the RN, so that we can match the nurse to the facility. Mm-hmm. I also have to make sure that all the compliance is there, that that's exactly what they're looking for, because that's what the hospital wants from me. Mm-hmm. They want a quality nurse who is skilled and can do the job, but due to Joint Commission and everything else, and insurance laws and litigations, we have to make sure that every I is dotted and T is crossed. Mm-hmm. And that allows me to focus on that and make sure that part of the job is done. Mm-hmm. And that also, just like the recruiter and the nurse have a great relationship, that allows me to have a great relationship with the facility. Sure. And if I have a good relationship with the facility, then they know that the phone call coming from myself, Atlas MedStaff, with a nurse, hey, we've had great experience with them, their nurses are great, let's get this one on board. Mm-hmm. And so that pays off.
Gotcha. So it isn't, and I know there are other agencies out here like this, it doesn't, you're not pigeonholed into you sign a contract, then you are also recruiting nurses at the same time. So you're not doing both sides of the equation. You're not trying to funnel nurses into a contract that you just signed that may not actually fit what they're looking for. You sign a contract, you send that contract out to all of our recruiters. All of our recruiters then have access to those jobs along with every other job that every other client manager has.
Exactly. There's no competition there. I mean, it's a matter of everybody at Atlas is very focused on the mission of the nurse, which is healthcare. I mean, we are all in the healthcare business, mm-hmm. and through our nurses, you are doing the hands-on. You're there, but mm-hmm. we all want to make sure that this company, Atlas MedStaff, is heading in the right direction with the right principles and right business model and right ideas. And that is why there's that delineation between client manager and recruiter. A recruiter cannot be adequate for the nurse if he's doing all these other jobs.
Right.
And I cannot be adequate for the facility and the nurse and for the business. I mean, if I mess up, I mean, in today's world, not only is there issues for the nurse, issues for our company, issues for the hospital, I have to be able to focus and be on top of every little detail.
Yep.
From insurance to Joint Commission to everything.
Yep, all the way through the life cycle of that placement.
Through the entire placement, yes.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that a little bit. What I'm interested to know, though, is let's talk about a vendor manager, a VMS,
Okay.
versus an MSP, so a managed service provider, so a company, right, an agency that has an exclusive at a facility or a group of facilities, right, at a system that we would then subcontract to and work and send candidates to that other agency, and that other agency would then send it on to the hospital, or your own contract. Let's walk through each one of those, the steps through each one of those. Let's start with the VMS first.
Well, the vendor management service, I mean, basically there is, once again, a platform, a middle person for a hospital that they're going to work through this. And so all my submittals, all my communication, everything has to go through this VMS. Mm-hmm. So when I do a submittal, I've got now a middle person that I need to, and I've also got competition with other companies who are using the same VMS.
Right.
And so I want to make sure that, I'm submitting the profile. I got to make sure, first thing I do is make sure everything on that profile is exactly what they're looking for. And if it's not, I'll get back with the recruiter, and I may ask a few questions to ask the RN, hey, I see that at this facility, this ICU nurse may have done that. Has she also done this? Is there any experience here? Can we document this down? That will better help us to market her into this position.
Why is that important, though?
Well,
why? If everything on a vendor manager submittal, why is that important?
Because you want to get your nurse ahead of the other nurses.
Yep.
I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. If you're coming through us, you've signed up with us. We want to do our best, not only for you but for the hospital. And part of that is to take every single skill that you may have, every piece of experience, because I know what the hospital's looking for, and if I'm maybe missing a little piece on that, I can get that on there. And when I'll use the word pitching, but when I am sending you to that person, it's my job I have to market to them. I have to say, Linda's got X, Y, and Z. Not only does she have 15 years experience, but she can do femoral, she can do arterial. There's all this stuff that she has. You may not need that, but this nurse has got charge experience. She's got all this, and that just enables me to make that nurse stand out above the rest, and hopefully get her an interview before anybody else would get.
Because generally, out of the three of them we're going to talk about, VMS, MSP, and your contract, the VMS is going to have a higher volume of profiles.
Absolutely. I might put the job out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and depending on where the job is at, I might get a submittal at 10:15, and there may have already been 10, 11, 12 submittals in before me, depending on where it's at.
Yep.
In the time of year, in the place. So, yeah, it's very important that if I do find myself in that situation, that I might be 12th in, but out of those 12 profiles they have, mine looks the best. Mine is the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And then talk about, in the VMS, how many layers do you have to go through in order to even try to get that nurse interviewed?
Wow, it kind of depends, but minimum of 1, often 3, because it would normally go to my contact, who will then send it to their compliance person.
Your contact at the vendor.
My contact at the vendor.
Yep.
Who will have a person in their pipeline that'll look at the profile that I just sent them, and then they will check everything on there, just as I did when the recruiter sent it to me. Then it will go back to my contact person and say, yes, this profile is okay. You can send it on to the nurse manager. Then it goes to the nurse manager. Nurse manager has to look at it, and the nurse manager by this time may have a stack of profiles sitting in front of them. Yay high. And so it's very important that so you got that, nurse manager will go through an interview. A lot of times it's very important for me to provide an availability of my nurse, and that nurse has to be available, because the nurse manager will often, okay, this one's not available, flip on to the next one, and we just lost it.
Yep.
So, and I have no control over that.
No.
Because I'm going through this vendor managed system.
So multiple layers, one shot.
Multiple layers, one shot, and it's my job to have those balls in the air and make them all land just perfectly.
Just right.
Just perfectly. And if I miss one spot there,
Yep.
or then we're moving on.
Right, you move on. They move on to the next profile, which yeah,
exactly.
So it goes that way through the chain. It goes from you to contact at vendor to possibly compliance person at vendor. Then from that to the facility to nurse manager, and then interview happens, and it repeats that process backwards.
Yeah. Then it goes back to vendor, then to me, and then I'm sending the offer out or the decline. Usually, hopefully, offer.
What kind of time frame do you look at that on generally?
It kind of depends. I've seen it take as short as a couple of hours. I've seen it take as long as a week.
Yeah.
It really depends on the facility. Sometimes you'll have a nurse manager that's out sick and no one covering for him, or a nurse manager on vacation, or a nurse manager who's just overwhelmed.
Yep.
And by the time that profile is like, I'll get through them. And then you'll have others where that need is they need somebody yesterday.
Yep.
And that nurse manager is on the phone with me or somebody, immediately.
Right, through that chain.
Yeah.
So then talk about the MSP. How is the managed service provider submittal different?
So this is a situation where a hospital is signed up with one company, and that company then lets companies like ours or go through them because they don't have enough nurses to staff that hospital.
Sure.
And the hospital might use 300 travelers a year, and they may only be able to put 150 in there. So they have to go through trusted agencies. So I build a relationship with the managed service provider, and often it's just a matter of I have a contact there and sending the profile there, they check it, and then it goes on to the nurse manager, and then it comes back. So there's usually not as many layers, and then it's simply a matter of, once again, you have to build the best relationship you can with that person and let them know that this is why my nurses are the best. I'm detail orientated. Our compliance is we don't miss deadlines. Missing a start date because a nurse is not compliant will...
It's a death sentence.
It's a death sentence, and we'll sink you with all three contracts as far as getting that next placement, and your nurse being right there for it. So
ideally, then you're looking at the last one, which is your contract. So there's agencies will go out, or hospitals will sign contracts with multiple agencies without any sort of middleman, vendor, anything like that. Online platform that we're submitting. Generally, you're emailing candidates to that person. That's either it could be a nurse manager, it could be a staffing person.
Those are ideal because yes, it could be the unit manager, it could be nurse administration, nurse staffing, and that allows me to have a relationship directly with somebody or multiple people in that hospital, where I can call and I can say, hey Nancy, I know you need an ER nurse, or I've got this great profile, and let me send it over to you. And you build that relationship, and it's trusted, and they know you know them, and I can get an immediate interview and offer.
Sure.
And it's just a matter of continuously providing what they're looking for. Also, what's great about those contracts is it enables me I can go on campus, I can go to the hospital, I can go to the town, I can visit with the nurse managers, I can personally see what they need, I can look at the units, and where that information really becomes great is I can pass that on to the recruiter. I know the facility, I know your nurse manager, and if you have an issue, you're on the phone with your recruiter, so and so, this happened last night. I know the nurse manager, and I can call and I can intervene, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and so those are the ideal relationships to have. And
now every one of your job orders is clearly marked, so that the recruiter pitching the job to the nurse, knows, is this a VMS? Is this an MSP? Is this our contract? Every one of those is marked.
Every one of those is marked. Because ideally, we would like to staff with our own contracts.
Sure.
VMSs and MSPs, there's another finger in the pie. We pride ourselves on being one of the best paying companies out there, and really, with no layers of management, and being able to pay our nurses the best. Well, the more fingers that are in the pie that are out of our control, I mean,
Exactly.
we still do our best, but
And I think that's a fair question too. That if you're a nurse looking for a job, talking to your recruiter, whether it's with us or somebody else, ask that question: Who has this contract? Who holds this contract? I think that's a really important question to ask. And so then you can then gauge, how long do I need to wait before I ask for some feedback? If it goes 24 hours, 48 hours, and it's through a vendor, well, that's probably about right. I mean, that's, or whatever.
Yeah.
If it's their contract or our contract or whatever, and it's a direct one-on-one relationship and it's gone 48 hours, something's not right there. Something didn't happen or has broken down along the way.
I have some vendors who tell me do not contact us for at least 24 hours after your submittal. And a lot happens in this business in 24 hours.
Yep.
And my direct contracts, I can email, I can have the nurse manager on the phone, email that and go through it with them, and hey, she can interview right now. He can interview right now.
And so that hang up the phone, pick up the phone is the next phone call to do the interview.
And it's just boom, boom, boom. And with those direct contracts, to be honest with you, some of the nurses are my best friends in these, because nurses hear about hospitals or they've worked at hospitals, and they'll say, hey, Mike, are you working with XYZ hospital?
Right.
And pretty soon, no, and I'll hear about it, and I'll be able to, call them and hopefully get a direct contract or find. And so, we're all a team.
We're all in this together.
It's just a team.
Yeah.
And I love being part of it.
So, and you keyed on something just a while back there that I wanted to talk about. Making that profile stand out. What makes that profile stand out? Give me a piece or two that would make your profile look better. So when it comes to you, you're like, yep, this has everything I need. This is what, in order to make that submission just as best as you possibly could.
That's easy. One of the number one things that nurse managers looked at, if you have, of course, skills, you want to make sure that the skills are matched to the job. But nurse managers want to see if this travel nurse has extended previous assignments. If a nurse manager looks through and sees, wow, she extended their three contracts or whatever, it's like, wow, must know her stuff or his stuff. So, if you're an experienced traveler, extensions are one of the best things you can have on there, because that's the first thing they look at. Second, of course, is to make sure that the skills do match up. Are all the certs there? Is the number of years experience there? If they're going to a major level 1 trauma facility, do they have that experience? So those type of things. Gaps of employment. The other one, and here's a big one, and I'm going to touch on this slightly because I'm not getting down on it, but everybody needs a day off now and then. And a lot of times anymore, this day and age, those days off need to be submitted. They need to be with that submittal. There are some people who maybe ask for a little bit more time off than maybe in a 13-week period, and a nurse manager sees that, and a nurse manager sees a traveler as somebody there to help. The traveler's there because they need help. And in a 13-week assignment, if you're looking for 2.5 weeks off spread out this time, that's difficult for a nurse manager to work with. We will do our best to accommodate the nurse's request for time off.
Which is one of the things we encourage here, right? Is get out there when you're on a contract, get out there and explore, see the area, but then understand too, when those needs come up, when those temporary needs come up, it's an immediate thing. So there's a fine line. Yeah,
and also have a license in the state. We know that the whole compact thing just changed around a little bit, but just little things like that. And oftentimes, hospitals are willing to work with you on that. But,
I believe so.
No gaps in employment.
That's a big thing too. Or explain what those gaps were.
Explain what those gaps were. Hey,
not all gaps are bad.
Yeah, my child was sick.
Took care of your ailing mother, whatever that. I've seen it. It happens.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. You may recognize the voice as the potentially Emmy-nominated. Emmy? Is that an Emmy for
Grammy?
Music? Grammy-nominated vocalist
Grammy nomination
for the Pete and Justin's Awesome Page.
It's all the rage.
He sang it and makes a guest appearance in their intro. So, if you need anything musically, we could hire him out. I only take a small percentage. I will be his vendor manager.
There you go. Yeah.
How's that?
Thank you so much. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Next week, Adam will be back, and we are going to talk about the role of Facebook groups, social media groups, web pages and where they fit for all of you, the good, bad, the ugly, who owns them, who runs them. We'll talk about it all. So we'll see you next week.